Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Chatting Cinema. So, today we're going to be going through it's almost like a best of the year type episode. But Letterboxd, our favorite social media platform, has put out a ballot that you can fill out where you pick your favorites of the year in a number of different categories. So, it lets you fill out 10 choices for Best Picture, and then you pick three different branches where you can vote on because, as it says in the description, Real Academy voters usually belong to separate branches. So we picked, Luke and I have already filled out a letterbox ballot. Gianni is going to kind of work through his as we're recording here, as we talk about, Luke and I talk about our choices, and then Gianni picks his own, um, and kind of go from there. So we did acting, directing, and writing, as well as getting the freebie for Best Picture. So on your screen, you can kind of see if you're watching this on YouTube, what the ballot looks like for Letterboxd when you go into this.
Then we'll launch right into Best Picture here.
Yes.
All right, so first choice, you know what to put, Gianni.
We
This
all
is no,
collectively
this
agree
is no question.
that it is
We did. We would
Spider-Man.
give Spider-Man No Way Home Best Picture. This
Yeah.
was the first choice for all of us, all three of us. And Luke and I have already talked about how insane our lists ended up. But it's funny looking at Spider-Man next to the choices I have. It's just so deranged. But that was all of our favorites of the year when we talked about, our top favorite movie of the year. So why wouldn't it get Best Picture, right?
Yep. I mean, hey, this is Letterboxd. We don't have to vote the Academy voting style. We vote for what we believe.
Yeah.
So, Flynn, you want to rattle off your 10 list?
Yes. So my 10 options for Best Picture, it would be hysterical if this was the Academy list. No Way Home, The Green Knight, Dune, Spencer, In the Heights, Red Rocket, Parallel Mothers, Tick Tick Boom, The Worst Person in the World, and A West Side Story were my 10 options for Best Picture.
Yeah. So, my 10, Spider-Man No Way Home, Dune, Tick Tick Boom, The Green Knight, Last Night in Soho, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, The Suicide Squad, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, Candyman, and Spencer. I love my list because the Academy is afraid to nominate things they don't understand, and that's most of that list. Gianni, love the second choice. Love to see it.
I think for the sake of time, I won't fill all of these out again, but I will read off my list. And going to number 4, I had In the Heights, followed by Dune, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Being James Bond, which is a really neat documentary that's on the 4K Blu-ray of No Way Home. I mean, No Way Home, No Time to Die. Too many no's this year. And that's a really cool documentary that goes through Daniel Craig's tenure as Bond, and I really liked it. I'm a sucker for like DVD documentaries, so that was really cool to see. And I'm amazed that Letterboxd had it, even though I shouldn't be because they have everything.
Yeah.
So
Letterboxd is king.
Followed by Spencer, Fauci, the documentary about Dr. Fauci, and then the Mitchells versus the Machines.
Love it.
But good times all around. Best director.
Oh, this one was hard.
Yeah, my choices for best director were, I mean, I don't even know how much like similarity, like what the Venn diagram will look like with the Academy nominees. But I picked for each of these categories, my first choice was who I'd give the award to, and then the other 4 were nominees, so not really a ranking. But my choice for director was David Lowery for The Green Knight. I think that's a movie that's really hard to, kind of pull off. And I think that David Lowery did a great job doing that. So he would be my win. My other 4 choices were Denis Villeneuve for Dune, Ryusuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car, Sean Baker for Red Rocket, and Pedro Almodovar for Parallel Mothers. So I think that of that list, probably only Denis has a shot at getting the Academy Award nominee. And I don't think he'll win, but out of the nominations they'll get, I would like to see him win. But those were my 5 options. Luke, if you want to give yours.
So we agree on who should win. I put David Lowery first as well.
Sweet.
And this was a very long, hard decision because I took a step back because pretty much I could have 10 directors, but they only let you pick 5.
Yeah.
And the reason why I went with David is that I think none of the other directors could have done what he did in The Green Knight.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a knock on any of them. It's just that David was meant to direct that movie, that story, bring it to life, add in new elements, bring in old elements from the original story. And just visually, the movie's gorgeous. And even though it's a tough watch because it makes you think quite a bit, it's also a satisfying watch of how pretty it is.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that combined led me to giving him my proverbial Oscar.
Right.
And then my other 4 choices were Denis for Dune, Nia DaCosta for Candyman,
mm-hmm.
Lin-Manuel for Tick, Tick, Boom, and Steven Spielberg for West Side Story.
Nice.
And, Nia and Lin are on there because first time directing or early in your career directing and making movies that are that much of a banger.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, how do you do that? So, and I mean, I just threw Steven Spielberg in there because that dude's insane. He's pretty good at making these movies.
I hope Spielberg gets the nomination, and I think that he will for West Side Story because
I think he's definitely a lock for nomination. I don't know about win, but he'll be nominated.
It is wild what he did on West Side Story.
I think my pick is probably Denis for Dune.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was such a huge undertaking to bring that back to the big screen and in a way that ended up being super accessible.
Right.
And obviously audiences went out to see it. So
right.
Good on him. And I think that he has yet to make quote unquote a bad film. And I don't think he ever will. But I think Dune is probably his time to shine when it comes to the Oscars. I would really like to see it for him. We'll get to it in this branch list, but I also have Dune for cinematography. I think it should win cinematography.
Yeah, I think Dune should win for cinematography too.
Yeah,
because The Green Knight won't get nominated. We might all have the same winner for Best Actor.
I'm going.
My choice is Andrew Garfield for the win. I think that I would have already said that, and then there are videos comparing his performance to footage of Jonathan Larson floating around online, and it's just absurd. And you can feel every bit of passion that Garfield put into it, not only when you're watching the film and the product itself, but when you hear him talk about the movie and what the role meant to him. And I think that Lynn did a phenomenal job directing this. I think everybody working on it did a great job. But I think that if that's one of those movies where if the central performance is lacking, that it can all fall apart pretty quickly. And Tick, Tick, Boom has the exact opposite situation where Garfield puts his all into it and the whole product is elevated, because no matter what you think about the other elements, this is a must-see performance from him. Like, you cannot take your eyes off of Andrew Garfield in this movie. So he would get the Oscar for me. I think he deserves it. I think that there's a chance that maybe he wins. I don't know. I'm holding out hope for him. But let's get to the more unhinged choices. Dev Patel in The Green Knight, obviously he got an acting nod from me. Hidetoshi Nishijima for Drive My Car, insane performance. Simon Rex for Red Rocket, and get ready, cinephiles, Tom Holland in Spider-Man No Way Home is my 5th nominee.
If Holland was going to be on your list, because he's on mine.
He is in there. That's another one where if that central performance is any less emotional, any less real, that the movie doesn't work as well. So blown away by Tom Holland's work as always, but especially in this one where he came into his own as Spidey. And he obviously won't get any kind of Oscar nomination, but I think that he does deserve to be highlighted for that. So.
Well, Flynn, we had the first 2 choices the same, because I also went with Andrew Garfield winning and Dev Patel, because the Academy are cowards and they won't nominate Dev, even though he absolutely deserves it. It's a truly beautiful performance in The Green Knight.
Yep.
He is acting with nothing for just about 2 hours. There's a couple conversations, but a lot of it is just him living in that moment. And if you don't feel what Gawain is going through, I don't think you watched the movie right. Andrew, I would just echo what you guys have said.
Yep.
That performance is beautiful. I truly think it's Oscar worthy. and just when it came out and like hearing Andrew's press tour about it while he was lying about being in Spider-Man, like all of the answers he gave were so beautiful about what he understood what he was undertaking playing that character. And I mean, a lot of actors come from theater backgrounds, and I don't think many actors don't know what rent is at this point in time and how important a piece of media it is for all of art. And I think Andrew, when you watch that old footage of Jonathan Larson doing Tick, Tick, Boom, he just walked right out of that VHS tape and came to life. So that's kind of a no-brainer win for me. And then Devs 2, then I would put Yahya Abdul-Mateen II for Candyman at 3. That movie, I feel like, will just completely get ignored by the Oscars.
Yeah.
And I think it had amazing things to say. I think it was visually some of the most creative horror work we've seen in a while, and we're kind of in a renaissance of horror. And like a lot of the scenes were just really innovative there. But I think his performance is the heart of that movie, and he is really just about to be like one of the biggest guys in Hollywood. Like he is about to be here and be in big movies year after year. Once Ambulance is out, there will not be a bad movie in him for a while. He did that before people knew who he was, and it's fine. Then my fourth choice is Denzel Washington for The Tragedy of Macbeth. Denzel knew the pressure going into it, playing Macbeth, and all of the negative stuff and like the history of the role. And he basically said, I don't care. And then he put on such an amazing performance in that movie. And like, I don't know if it's that I'm older now, because I feel like when I watched Shakespeare stuff when I was younger, I was like, what are they saying? But like this movie, I felt like was a really, really, really great balance of like they're screaming at each other in Shakespearean, but you can get what's happening too. And Denzel's performance in that, I mean, just the unhinged final monologue. Oh my God, I'm insane. And then my fifth choice is that Timothy Chalamet son of a bitch from Dune. I adore his performance in that movie so much. It was either him or Tom. So I was picking between Zendaya's BFF, friend zone, and her boyfriend. But I went with Timmy just because I don't know if he's going to get a nod from the Academy. I hope he does, because he was really good in Dune, and to undertake being like the face of a franchise. He asked Mark Hamill about it being Luke Skywalker. You know, he asked Tobey Maguire about it being the first Spider-Man on live action. Like, it's a lot. Like, it is a big undertaking being that center face on the posters with a million faces. And I think Timmy brought his A game, and I don't think he deserves to win because there's a lot of great performances this year, but I'd love to see him get recognized.
I also want to highlight real quick Anthony Ramos in The Heights.
Yeah.
He's another one I think he'll be overlooked for a nomination, but he is the heartbeat of that movie, and he's surrounded by a cast that is passionate and brings amazing performances to the screen. So for him to stand out all the same and be the leading man in that film is just something in and of itself. So I loved In the Heights, and I loved his performance. Moving on to Best Actress.
Best Actress.
I think we all agree on this one as well.
No, you're correct.
Lock her in. If Kristen Stewart does not win the Academy Award for Spencer, I'm going to lose my mind. Okay. It is an absurd performance. And like I was saying with Garfield, but for, a lot of different reasons for Spencer, because it's a completely different movie than Tick, Tick, Boom. But Spencer is a movie that, for all the excellent score work and production design work and directing, like that is a movie that falls apart if Kristen Stewart is not doing what she does in Spencer. It's one of my favorite performances I've ever seen, and I don't know what I'll do if she doesn't win. So my other choices were Renata Rainsvey for The Worst Person in the World, and let me tell you that most other years she would be my pick because she's absurd in that movie. But Kristen Stewart was just so good to me that nobody can overtake her at this point. And then I had Rachel Zegler in West Side Story, phenomenal. Penelope Cruz in Parallel Mothers, Carries, she's fantastic. And one that's way under the radar, Taylor Page in Zola. She is not my last Zola acting nomination. But I think that Zola is so modern and so aware of the era it's representing and the era in which it's coming out. And I think that sometimes people discount those types of performances when you're playing a character that's so realistic, that feels like, you could meet this person at a restaurant. This person could be your waitress. And that's what Taylor Page does in Zola, which just adds to the realness of that movie for me. So it's a shame because it's going to get buried because it came out so early in the year in 2021, but I think that she 100% deserves recognition for that performance. And it's a shame that it's kind of flown under the radar since then, but she is my last choice for nominations for actress.
Actress was hard, man. There was a lot of really good performances this year. So, like I said, Kristen Stewart is my win, because if she doesn't win, I think the Oscars are broken. I think we need to send them back and get a new one. My second choice would be Rachel Zegler in West Side Story. Without her, I don't think the movie means anything. Like, she is so good. And this is like her first major role. And like, she was just she literally asked Steven Spielberg if she could do her High School Musical still too. Like, so funny. But she's just amazing in that movie. She lights up the screen every time she's on it. And I think this is just a sign that Rachel's going to be around for a long time, leading movies. And hopefully she does get nominated, but I think it won't be her last nomination. I think she has a win in her future. My third choice is Thomasin McKenzie from Last Night in Soho. Edgar Wright, you cannot make a bad movie, and you always pick really great people to lead these movies. And I think Thomasin McKenzie's on the rise as well. She's been in, like, Old wasn't an amazing movie, but I thought she was good in it, and Old was a fun watch. Flynn and I laughed quite a bit. Yeah, and I mean, she's in Jojo Rabbit, which is another great movie, but this was really her first, like, she's the leading role, and she was so good. This movie shows a descent of madness for this character, and it is just so interesting to watch, and I think she portrays it in a really cool way, so I really enjoyed that. My fourth choice is Frances McDormand for The Tragedy of Macbeth. That movie is absurd. It's just like probably one of the best modern Shakespeare adaptations we've gotten. And I think Frances McDormand is the best part of the movie. Like, Lady Macbeth is crazy. And like, I remember reading that in high school, and we did the play where people would act out in the class. And like, it was just like, every time we read a Lady Macbeth passage, it was like, oh my God, this woman's nuts. And then Frances McDormand, I mean, she's got acting chops, and she really brought it for this movie. I thought she was amazing. And then my fifth choice is Emily Blunt for A Quiet Place 2, because that movie is not getting talked about. It's a sequel. It's a horror movie, and it came out in the first or second quarter of the year. So all of that means the Academy doesn't think it exists.
Right.
And I think Emily Blunt was really wonderful in that movie. I think the whole cast was, first off. Like, the four main leads were absurd, but I think Emily is just so good, and I love giving recognition to people that don't get it usually. So I think she deserves a nomination. But yeah, that's my five.
I also agree. I think Kristen Stewart should win for Spencer. She's my pick. I've put together here just a quick 5 people that I think will be nominated. I think this is probably how it's going to look, with the exception of Jennifer Lawrence. I think that could either end up being, I don't know, it could end up being anybody, I guess. But
I feel like Lady Gaga's probably going to get nominated.
Lady Gaga has a shot.
Frances McDormand has been an Oscar, darling. So
yeah, but the only reason I have Nicole Kidman at number 2 though is because she won the Golden Globe, and I haven't seen Being the Ricardos yet, which is out of character for me, being an Aaron Sorkin fan. But that was, I think, an upset. Like, I think most people would agree that was an upset. So she could end up winning the Oscar too, for all we know.
She's got momentum.
Yeah. Best Supporting Actor.
My choices are wild. the supporting categories for this ballot, I think, were probably the hardest ones to fill out for me. So my choice is very strange, but my choice is Simon Helberg for Annette. He's the composer in Annette, and I didn't adore Annette. I actually really liked it. I thought it was good. But Simon Helberg, to me, in a movie where he's going toe to toe with Adam Driver, like, he is the highlight for me of that movie. Him and, the baby Annette doll, of course. But there's a scene in Annette where he's doing a number about being a conductor, and I did not know Simon Helberg could act like that. Like you don't really see him here and there outside of The Big Bang Theory, which I think is what he's most well known for. So I don't know if it was like just that adding to it for me, but that was one of my favorite scenes of the year. And Simon Helberg absolutely crushes. So he's fantastic in that movie. And like I said, the supporting actor race this year is really odd. So some other ones. Woody Norman in Come On, Come On, the coolest kid in the world. Woody Norman rules in that movie. It's kind of like he's just allowed to be a kid, but he brings it every second he's on screen. So Woody Norman's in there for me. Anders Danielson Lee from The Worst Person in the World. Like I was talking about with Renata, great performances in that movie all around. And Anders is no different. He's fantastic. Mike Faced in West Side Story. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about this skinny fella. So good. He's so good. He exactly. John Mulaney. He's
new in town.
Mike is my favorite male performance from that movie. Obviously, Rachel takes favorite performance, but he's fantastic. Like he's heartbreaking and complex, and he kills When You're a Jet, like from the very beginning. And he is responsible for opening that movie. And so much of a musical is hooking you in with that opening number. It's one of the biggest numbers of the show. And something like In the Heights has the benefit of Anthony, who's just bringing it the whole time, bringing that in, and you're following the main character, and who's Navi. So Mike Faced, yeah, I think he deserves all the credit in the world. I think he was great. And my fifth choice, Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, Spider-Man No Way Home. Yes, that's right. He is absurd in that movie. Like he's ridiculous. He's so intimidating and he's so unhinged, and he's bringing in the dual roles element of it, of Norman Osborn, that he has in the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, where he's playing Norman Osborn just baseline, and then he's switching to the Goblin, and you can just see it on his face. You can see it in his eyes, and I think that that's exceptional acting to me. Like when you can make that switch and it's obvious to everybody in the room that this character is a different person now, that's all Willem. Like that is all him doing his thing. So
no
again, yeah, exactly. And they got him out of the mask, which is even better because he gets to be so expressive. And there are faces that Willem Dafoe makes in this movie that I will think about every day for the rest of my life. So yes, obviously he will not get a nomination from the Academy, but this is, out of all of these performances that I just named, which are phenomenal performances, this is the one that's going to live on. This is the one that people are going to remember for years to come. This is the one that's going to be talked about all the time. So, why not? Why not give him the attention he deserves? Because it's not like it's subpar acting. I thought it was among the best acting of the year. So Willem Dafoe is my fifth.
So bouncing off of that, my pick to win is Willem Dafoe, and
Nice.
I don't care.
Nice.
I when I look at supporting actor and supporting actress, I think if you take this character out of the movie, it would just be worse. Like if you take this person out, because obviously the lead, it makes sense for the lead. But if you take out the convincing storyline of Green Goblin with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, that movie doesn't have nearly as much emotional weight, and the build from like him first meeting him to like that final confrontation, it's just not the same. Willem Dafoe brought it on such an unreal level that many actors aren't capable of. And that's why I love that he was our first major comic book movie villain of the Marvel universe, at least for the Raimi Spider-Man. But him in this movie is just unreal. Like you said, Flynn, the faces he makes will never leave you. And like I just catch myself saying, Norman's on sabbatical, honey, all the time. Like, it's just fun. Like this performance has stayed with me. I've thought about it quite a bit. And it helps that I saw it 7 times in theaters, but like I still thought about it when I wasn't in theaters. So he's my first choice. My second choice is Corey Hawkins for The Tragedy of Macbeth. Now, that movie, I keep going back to it. It's just like a masterclass in acting. Like these people nailed these roles, and it's just such a great watch. It's so good. But I really thought Macduff and Lady Macbeth were the 2 best parts, and then Macbeth. Like, so that's why all 3 of them ended up being nominated for me. And I think he has a chance at an actual nomination for supporting actor for Macduff, because Macduff's
I do too.
Pretty big role, and he was very good. My third choice, Eat It Haters, is Tony Leung for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. He is probably the most charismatic human being that's ever existed. I love how you're scrolling to him right now, Gianni.
Yes.
Like truly, like made that movie so good, because it was like, hey, have you heard of like this comic book character? No. Well, then we're gonna give you Simu Liu and Tony Leung to like introduce them and be 2 of the most charismatic, fun characters to watch. Father-son duo, ridiculous. And he, I mean, just that first fight scene with his future wife is one of my favorite movie scenes of the entire year. It's so fun. So he's my third choice. My fourth choice is Mike Faist for West Side Story, because
yes,
I mean, he's incredible as Riff, and I would be shocked if his agent isn't like a full voicemail box of like, can we get this guy in this. Like, he's incredible. He's so good. And watching him on the press tour, he was so humble, and he was just so happy to be there and have worked with Steven Spielberg and been in such an important musical and played, like you said, Flynn, one of the most important parts, because a lot of musicals, they get to open it up with their lead. But I mean, you don't meet Tony until a portion into the musical. So
yeah,
he's the one who really brings you into the world. So it's a very big role. And then my fifth choice, is Barry Keoghan from The Green Knight.
Yes,
because
he almost ended up on my list.
Barry's ridiculous. Barry's a little freak, and I love him so much. And like, if you've listened to this podcast before, you know Flynn and I love calling people little freaks when they're really good at actors.
Oh, he's a good little freak.
He's such a good little freak. I love him so much. And like, that was such a great, like, see The Green Knight in the summer and then see Eternals in November. I'm like, oh, all right, you're one of my favorites now. You're one of my favorites. And I think the Academy is afraid to say his name out loud because they know how talented he is. And he should be nominated, but he's not gonna be, and he's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
2 picks that I want to highlight. I don't think they'll be nominated, unfortunately, but I want to talk about Ciarán Hinds in Belfast. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, and that's it's also something that I'll talk about with Jeffrey Wright in The French Dispatch. But the screen time that he does get really stays with you. And Belfast is a movie that wasn't like super memorable for me. I enjoyed it while I watched it, but then when it was over, I'm like, I don't know if I'll see this again. But he has a few lines that I won't spoil about life and death that I will probably never forget. And Kenneth Branagh wrote it, so props to Branagh for writing, but Ciarán Hinds was chef's kiss. And then Jeffrey Wright in The French Dispatch. Something about The French Dispatch that didn't sit right with me after it ended, which is similar to a lot of Wes Anderson films, is it's like a lot of different stories that are kind of in one movie, but they don't necessarily tie together. At least that's how I feel. But Jeffrey Wright, he comes in the last 20 to 30 minutes of the film, and easily my favorite part of the movie. Like, his little anecdote was my favorite in Dispatch. I think it earned really, like two more stars for me on Letterboxd, like just for the portion of it. So yeah, I would love to see him be nominated. I know neither of them will be, but anyway.
I think Hines has a shot, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like The French Dispatch has kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like Belfast has kind of been one of these safe Academy movies. So, but we'll see.
We shall see.
Supporting actress, once again, very difficult.
So difficult.
My win was Alicia Vikander for The Green Knight. I think that she's sensational in that, and in a different way. But like I was talking about with Willem Dafoe, she's doing a dual role thing where she's playing 2 different characters that are very different from each other, and she does a great job in both. She does such a good job that I think that not everybody who saw The Green Knight realized that it was Alicia Vikander in both roles. But she has a monologue that would win this for her alone. And I have a large size Green Knight bias, but she was my pick to win. Going through the other ones, my other nominations, Ariana DeBose in West Side Story. Come on, like she's great. She's amazing. She really gives a an interesting heartbeat to that movie. And like Luke, like you were saying, with supporting acting categories and nominations, like this would be a different movie and a weaker movie without her. So Riley Keough for Zola, much like I was talking about with Taylor Page for Zola. Also for the actor category, he didn't make my list, but shout out to Coleman Domingo, the legend. He's so good in that movie too. But Riley Keough in Zola, she is so contemptible. Like everything that she does, you're just like hating this person more and more, but you're also like kind of seeing the life that she leads, why she would make these decisions and choices. And she's just so good. And she disappears into the role in that movie. So Riley Keough is up there. Tokomiura in Drive My Car. Another one of these movies like I'm talking about where the acting kind of needs to be next level for the movie to work. And she's just sensational in Drive My Car. She's reserved and somber. And the final scene of Drive My Car is one of my favorite scenes of the year. And features, I think, some of the best acting of the year. So she's my fourth choice. And my fifth choice was Melina Smith for Parallel Mothers. I don't, obviously it won't get nominated like Netflix likes to, or Netflix, oh my goodness. The Academy. I don't even know how I got that mixed up. Anyway, the Academy likes to throw like a bone to foreign films. Like they'll have the one foreign category and that'll be that, and nothing else will really be talked about. I know that there's a decently big campaign to get Drive My Car nominated for Best Picture. That I've seen a lot from the Janus Films Twitter account, but this isn't about that. This is about Melina Smith and Parallel Mothers. I'm surprised she's in as a supporting actress, honestly, because like I think that she's a co-lead with Penelope Cruz in Parallel Mothers, but man, she is heartbreaking and she knows when to be vulnerable and when to stand strong. And I think that, hers was probably my favorite performance in that film. So I think she does some sensational work in that. So she was my fifth choice. And I don't know if any of those people that I named will be nominated, but those are my choices for the Letterboxd Oscars.
Yeah, well, my choices for the Letterboxd Oscars in the same vein. I don't know if any of them will be nominated, but you went with your real like film cinephile choices, and I went with my nerd choices. So the person I have winning, and I kind of agree with your thought about the Parallel Mothers person. I don't think she should be booked as a supporting actress. I think she's a co-lead because she helps make the movie exactly what it is, and that's Anya Taylor-Joy in Last Night in Soho. I think that she is just phenomenal in that movie, and I think her and Thomas and Mackenzie together create this really great story. But the fact that she was in supporting means I picked her for supporting because I thought she was wonderful. Right. My second choice is I think this one has a chance of being nominated. That's Rebecca Ferguson for Dune. I think Rebecca is just phenomenal in Dune. She's so good. Lady Jessica has some of the best moments and the best lines in that movie. Just pluck them out of context and they're just great. She also has some of the coolest costumes by far, like just those like the really like elaborate designs and stuff. Very cool. But I just thought she was really great, and she is just one of the anchors of that movie. Like it keeps relying on her to keep that story going forward, and she did not back down whatsoever. My third choice is Alicia Vikander for The Green Knight because The Green Knight's amazing, and Flynn said everything that needs to be said about that. She deserves it. She's great. She plays two characters, and the first time I watched it, I didn't even realize it. And then Flynn afterwards was like, "Isn't it great how she's both of them?" And I was like, "Huh?"
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
shocked. Because she's just great. She's just really great. My fourth choice, Eat It Haters, is Florence Pugh from Black Widow. No, it's not my favorite Marvel movie. It is not high up there. It was an enjoyable movie, but Florence Pugh is undeniably the best part of that movie. The fact that we got her as Yelena, and now that she's part of the MCU, like by far, it is the coolest part. And like her moments where she's just literally begging to have a normal family are some of the most heart-wrenching lines in that movie. And I think she's the best part of that movie by far. So that's why I have her up there. And also, I just adore her. And then my fifth choice, this one is just like I saw it and I'm like, it made me so happy, so I have to put it, is Ana de Armas in No Time to Die. Like her one scene in that movie, like
Yes.
was pure joy. And you don't get joy a lot in James Bond. Most of the time things bad are happening to James Bond. That
Yeah.
scene was just nice. It just was good. It was fun. She'll never get nominated, but for Letterboxd Oscars, you know damn well I'm voting for her. She
It
was
would be a
great.
weaker movie without her,
Yeah.
for sure.
Exactly.
Paloma
Exactly.
Paloma spinoff when?
Please. Or just give her her own franchise. It's fine.
Yes.
I want to say I agree. I think Rebecca Ferguson has a shot at being nominated for Dune, and I would be
I hope
happy to
so,
see her
yeah.
nomination. I also think Alicia Vikander has a shot. I think it could happen. Like if there's going to
Fingers
be a
crossed.
nomination from The Green Knight, it could be her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
She has been nominated before, so.
but my personal pick is Sally Hawkins from Spencer. I would love to see the duo of Kristen Stewart and Sally Hawkins win
Oh,
this year.
yes.
I think they deserve it. They elevate that movie so much, and obviously it's Kristen Stewart's movie, and it's her performance that's what you're going to see. But Sally Hawkins is great. So yeah, best adapted screenplay.
Adapted screenplay. So this was pretty difficult too. So the way I approached the adapted screenplay nominations was I thought about how hard the material was to adapt, and how effectively that was done. So my choice for a winner was Drive My Car, because I think that again that was a difficult screenplay to create and adapt, and that would be my winning choice. It's very heavily emotional, and there's a lot of like trauma being dealt with, and I just think that there's a lot of conversations in that movie that if adapted the wrong way could have sent the film one way, but everything about that script I think is perfect. So that was my choice to win. The Green Knight, in the thing about The Green Knight to me is it's a movie that feels modern despite being medieval, and there's been a lot of discussion about that, and we even talked about that on our favorites of the year video. But I think that The Green Knight, like, that's another one where it's very difficult to make this work and make it what it is, especially because the material that's being adapted is a very short story. So I can't believe that what they were able to do with that screenplay. So The Green Knight, West Side Story was my 3. Like we're talking about with West Side Story, this is an older musical. It's kind of hard to pull off, and I think that it really works in every way. So West Side Story, and another musical here, Tick Tick Boom. Again, like difficult to make work, and I think they nail it. Musicals I feel like are never really talked about in the screenplay category because it's about the songs, right? But there's a lot in between the songs for most musicals, and that has to also be compelling to get from point A to point B. So West Side Story and Tick Tick Boom, I think, did a great job of that. And Dune. Dune was my 5th choice because Dune is a long book. It's a dry book. And to adapt that screenplay, you're making a lot of, it's kind of the opposite of The Green Knight, right? Where The Green Knight, you have a small piece of material that you're extrapolating from. Dune, you're making a lot of very specific choices on what to include, what is necessary, what's going to keep the movie moving. And I think every choice made in that movie is exceptional. Like it is exactly what it needs to be. I think it's the exact length it needs to be. I don't think it's ever dull. I don't think it's ever boring. I don't think it ever gets bogged down in explaining things to its audience. So I don't know if it would have any chance of getting an adapted screenplay nomination, but I think that what that screenplay does is a very, very difficult thing to pull off. And I think it goes above and beyond in doing so. So those are my choices for adapted screenplay.
Well, my first choice is Dune, and you just said a lot of great words about exactly why. I think the main reason though is that Denis just didn't care and put part one at the bottom in the first
Hell
10
yeah.
seconds. Freaking legend. That movie's insane. It's undertaking something that has already failed in the public eye when sci-fi, they could not get enough of sci-fi in the 80s. You know, there were so many sci-fi movies popping up,
Sure.
and Dune just didn't work. But I think Denis, who has been a huge fan of the book since he was a kid, did a really great job of adapting what needed to be adapted. I mean, I think there's only a couple of scenes from that first half of the book that didn't make it.
Yeah.
But I think he did a great job, and I think we're set up to have quite the trilogy with him. So I think that deserves to win. But I also think it full-heartedly deserves to be nominated. My second choice would be The Green Knight, and I echo a lot of what Flynn said about just the difficulty of adapting such a short story and adding in new elements that don't feel out of place and making it feel so fresh and new while also having the skin of being in the medieval times. I think that's an evergreen story. I think what Gawain goes through, most young people go through. It's just not as extreme. And I think that at the core of that movie is a beautiful story. I think it deserves to be recognized. My third choice is Tick, Tick, Boom. And I think that not only are musicals hard, but biopics are hard.
Yeah.
And it did both. And it did it about an extremely influential figure who doesn't have a ton to work with because, unfortunately, of how much time he was here. He died when he was very young. So it's not like there's a whole life to pull from. I mean, he lived a very full life for 35, but Tick, Tick, Boom is just such a beautiful love letter to Broadway, to movies, to musicals. And it's just great. And I think the choices made by Lynn, who was directly influenced by Jonathan Larson. I mean, Lynn saw the original run of Rent and Broadway when he was a teenager, and he grew up in New York. And like, then he goes on to be one of the titans of the Broadway / movie musical industry. So it's a really cool story as well. My fourth choice is Candyman, and I think that's because making a horror sequel that's just as good as, if not better than the original, is almost unheard of. And Flynn, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I kind of think I like the new one better than the original in some ways. I don't know if it's like fully like I think it's a better movie because I think both are great, but just like Candyman, there was already proven they've made bad sequels and it was easy just to cash in on the character. But this movie was very smart, very clever, and had quite a bit to say about modern issues while also being a really entertaining horror movie. And the Academy doesn't nominate horror movies, and they should. And my fifth choice, eat it, haters. I keep saying this whenever I talk about MCU projects, is Spider-Man No Way Home. Because Spider-Man No Way Home did the unheard of. It was the classiest piece of fan service you'll ever see. It combined 3 different universes worth of characters where none of them felt out of place or as if they weren't the same character. And it told a beautiful story of a character that we all love, that we've seen in many iterations. And this is quite possibly our favorite version of Spider-Man that we've ever gotten. So I think that's an extremely big undertaking, and I think it deserves to be nominated, but the Academy are scared.
Yeah, no shot.
For the sake of time, I will only talk about one, and it is my pick for best adapted screenplay, and it's Dune. I think that it honors the original source material as much as it can the whole time. And I think about Denis Villeneuve and how, you know, any behind the scenes photo you look at, in one hand, he's got maybe his shot list for the day or his itinerary, but in the other is the book. It's Dune. And he says that the book constantly informed them while they were on set, whether it was in the desert or on a soundstage. And he was constantly referring back to the book. And I think like when I hear that, I just think that that's what a best adapted screenplay should be. You know, you're constantly referring to the source material while also trying to bring something new and original to the screen. And I think that he perfectly mended those together, and we got Dune out of it. Dune Part 1.
Yes.
Part 1.
Best Original Screenplay.
I believe this is the last category we're going to talk about for this because we picked directing, acting, and writing, and we did our picture picks. So original screenplay, my winner was The Worst Person in the World. There are emotional beats in that I think are universal, but there are moments that are so real and raw and really just reached out of the screen and punched me in the face a couple times, and I was kind of left speechless by some of it. And when you're writing a screenplay about real things, you know, like I was kind of saying in the acting categories with Taylor Page and Riley Keough for Zola, it's easy to stumble over that, and it's easy to try and be, you know, too modern or too whatever else, and end up being inauthentic. But there's nothing but authenticity for The Worst Person in the World. So that would be my screenplay winner. My other nominations were Red Rocket, pure originality from Sean Baker for this one. I mean, Red Rocket is unlike probably anything you've seen. And I think it's so good. And, you know, to echo some of the things I just said about Worst Person in the World, like it has distinctly modern feels, but it's never to a point where you're like, oh, they're trying too hard. It's just very real slice of life. And that is what another one of my choices, my fourth choice actually, was Come On, Come On. But in the same vein of Red Rocket, you know, very slice of life, very verite, just kind of things happening, that type of cinema. And again, very real. And Come On, I would highlight deals a lot with children. And I think it's very difficult to authentically represent children on the big screen. And I think that a lot of people get it wrong, but Come On gets it absolutely right every second of screen time. My other choices were Spencer. Spencer, when you're dealing with a figure that's as revered as Princess Diana, and that had, you know, their life tragically cut short, it's really hard to dive into that. And I think that it's done with reverence and grace. And I think that it's a really brave screenplay. I think that everything about that movie is brave for how they represent Princess Diana. And, you know, it's very bold. So all credit to that. And Parallel Mothers was my last choice. Again, originality, like the plot to that movie, I won't really get into in too much detail for anyone that hasn't seen it. But my jaw dropped a couple times at some of the twists and turns that the characters go through in that film. So originality alone kind of gets that on there for me. And yeah, as a, you know, continuing in with this theme of the screenplays I've picked, just like very real, very authentic, like it never feels overly written to me. So those were my 5 choices for original screenplay. Again, don't know if any of these will get a nomination, but at the Academy, but they were my choices.
So my 5 were pretty fun and random. My first choice is The Mitchells versus the Machines. I think it should win because it came out in January and I could not stop thinking about it all year long. It's a beautiful story. It has a lot of endearing moments and themes. It has a wonderful group of characters. And honestly, it's scary how much of a reality it could be with those smartphones taking over everything. I just think it's one of the smartest movies that's come out in a while. And I love when movies don't dumb things down for kids. And Lord and Miller really know how to make complex movies for kids because they understand kids can get these bigger concepts, and their movies just constantly show that. So I think as far as original screenplay goes, that one really just blew my mind in January of 2021, thinking when it came out and on Netflix, and I could not stop thinking about it all year long. So I feel like that's why it wins for me. My second choice is a little Edgar Wright action with Last Night in Soho. think he's an incredible writer. I think it's one of his strongest suits, and you just opened right up to it. I think this one, and I think Flynn would agree, was definitely the biggest jump from what he usually does. And that is wonderful to see in one of your favorite creators, because he's constantly evolving and getting better and diving into new areas that we're not used to. So I just loved that outing from him. My third choice is The French Dispatch. And I think, again, just like I said about Edgar Wright, I think one of Wes Anderson's strongest suits is writing one hell of a screenplay. And The French Dispatch, it does not waste a second of screen time. It may be 3 different stories that you're not sure how they relate until that really great endpoint with Jeffrey Wright, but all 3 are just so tightly edited. Like everything just feels like it needs to be there. And Wes wrote this the way he wrote it. And like, obviously he's working with some incredible actors who ad lib here and there, but like, come on, man. Like, it's Wes. Like, he's writing this stuff in his lab with all of his little freaky movies. My fourth choice is Red Rocket. I'm a very new Sean Baker fan, but I'm here to stay. I goddamn love his movies. His movies are insane. They have characters that you want to hate with every fiber of your being, but he somehow makes you root for them, and I don't get it. And he shows you real slices of America that are happening right now. And these people may be played by actors, but there is real ones out there that are very similar in aspects. So I think that's really difficult to capture something like that. And he's managed to do it multiple times now. And Red Rocket is exactly one of those movies. Simon Rex helps bringing that character to life, because goddamn, do you want to punch him in the face half the movie? But like, he's just so funny too. And then my fifth choice out of left field is Free Guy, because it was just so different and new and fresh. And I love it. Watch our video game movie episode coming out too.
I want to talk for just a second about Red Rocket, because I think some of the best original screenplays are the ones where you forget that, like, this is a screenplay, like someone wrote this, and Red Rocket is a perfect example of that, because you can take any scene out of that movie and just play it for someone and they'll think it was improvised, or they'll think that it was just like filmed. Like,
right.
But my pick for best original screenplay is the same as Luke's. It's The Mitchells versus the Machines. I can't remember the last movie that came along that I felt like was made for me specifically. And just for my love of movies from a very young age, being depicted on screen, I really feel like I'm Katie Mitchell throughout that movie. And it's just, again, it's feel good. It's very light, but also it's not afraid to step up to the plate and deal with those like adult themes, especially for a quote unquote kids movie. And that came out on Netflix too. So I feel like as soon as an animated film comes out on Netflix, like immediately less people see it, which is a shame, because this is something that I think everyone should see. And if you haven't, you should check it out, because it's there. You can literally watch it right now. So love The Mitchells versus the Machines. But yeah. Anything else we want to wrap up with on this?
Yeah, so
what happens if you
that's
click next?
I can't remember what
I don't
the
remember
other.
what comes.
Oh yeah,
it's just the submit button.
Yeah, there's probably all the categories. Yeah, the fun thing about doing an episode like this and a podcast like this is highlighting, your favorite stuff from the year, because a lot of my favorites and a lot of my picks, I had a lot of foreign cinema in there that's not necessarily going to get highlighted by the Academy. But I also had superhero movies and, things like that. And I think it's really important to have those conversations about film, because the Academy has such a brand recognition where like an Oscar is seen as legitimizing. And it's not always necessarily the case, and everybody's different. So everybody's going to have different opinions about different movies. Everybody's going to see different things. So it's really important to talk about the films that you like and why you liked them, and give them some love, because the Academy is one body that's, determining things by a number of factors that have a number of voters that have their own biases, and they're reacting to the general conversation and zeitgeist. That's why momentum is a thing for the Academy, where like certain people are winning certain awards, and then all of a sudden maybe they might win the Oscar. So it's not the be all end all of of cinema discussion. So I think that, it's fun. It's really fun to go through something like this if you want to fill out your own, if you have a Letterboxd, because there were certain categories where I would scroll and be like, oh yeah, that was this year, and I did really love that, and I completely forgot about it. It's something that happened with me with Taylor and Riley and Coleman Domingo and Zola, where I was like, oh yeah, this came out this year, and I thought it was so good, and I loved it. So yeah, it was a really fun ballot to fill out. It might take more of your time than you're expecting, because there are so many great films that come out every year, but I think it's certainly worth your while to do it.
100%. With that, I guess we will see you in the next one, and we'll probably be talking about the real Oscar nominees when they come out.
Yes.
So stay tuned.
Tear them apart.